This
I'm
conference will now be recorded.
I'm glad
Don't
um,
say anything incriminating.
an overlay while you're reading, those types of things. But it can also be really complex. So I see a lot of students who are nonverbal, so they'll be using technology to help them communicate. Since their voice can't do it, they might use their eyes, or they might use a switch, or they might just use their finger to help them communicate using an iPad or a different type of device. I am an OT by trade, an occupational therapist, and the school I was working for, most of the kids used assistive technology organically because it was a school all for kids with special needs, called the Cotting School, and it's in Lexington, and it's incredible. So then I ended up in the public schools doing assistive technology. To do that, I was kind of surprised. I didn't have any certification to actually get the job. And I guess the person before me was a reading assistant. And then the person before her was a special ed teacher. I don't know if that's unique to just this school. Since I've begun, I did get my assistive technology or professional certification, but it wasn't actually required. But I needed to have something to like prove to myself that I should be doing this role. Um, so if you are at all interested in that, I wanted to just share it takes between 1,000 to 6,000 hours, depending on the type of degree that you have and your experience. Yeah, so is that good enough of an overview?
That was good. Does anybody want to start us off with a question?
I also have questions from online.
Yeah, I submitted a question. I submitted a question about, I have a student who's blind right now. And so I teach in a small public high school, and he does have an aide, and he does have someone who comes in to help him braille. But I didn't know, he has audiobooks. He has an iPad and he's linked up with audiobooks, but I didn't know if there was anything else that I could be doing or for him.
So I saw your question. I took a couple notes. I don't actually have a ton of experience with kids who are blind. I see a lot of kids with low vision. Can he see at all, or is he?
Yeah, he's blind.
Okay, I have I'm gonna send something in the chat. I was looking, it looks like Perkins has a lot of different videos. My first suggestion would be to check in his IP and see who's on his service team. Because chances are he's probably seen somebody for like mobility and orientation or a vision specialist, somebody that can help you in that area. And then I would check with maybe the reading specialist and see if they have suggestions. But you can also reach out to Perkins School of the Blind. They're really, really nice. I just don't have enough experience to like talk to you. If you needed stuff for low vision, I have a lot, but not
right. Yeah.
total.
No, that's fine. I will definitely check out Perkins. Thank you.
You can reach out to anyone there. They're so nice.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, sorry.
No, thank you.
But I guess on that topic, your special ed teachers are also probably a really good resource. They know the student best and they're already modifying the materials. So to figure out how they're accessing their materials anyway, you might want to start with their liaison or coordinator, whatever they call it at your school.
Okay.
I'm assuming he's on an IEP or a 504.
He's
not. Okay.
He has an extensive IEP. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Then
yeah.
I'd reach out to the people that already work with him.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure. But on the topic of low vision, I did want to include that for librarians, Bookshare might be something that your school is already using. And if they're not, it might be something that you want to start using with your kids. Their eligibility is pretty concrete. They have to meet certain criteria in order to be eligible. But, and that's for copyright reasons, but assuming that they meet the criteria, a lot of your kids can probably access books on there. Learning Ally also is a really good resource. Their criteria is a little bit less, so it can be a little bit more flexible, but it's really expensive. I think it's like $900 per maybe 10 users. I get a lot of our kids through a grant. It goes out once a year. It's in usually July 1st is when they come out with the grant, but you can check on Learning Ally's website and apply for the grant. Pretty cool too.
Okay.
Robin, are you district or are you building? Like, do you just handle the one building or are you the whole district?
No, I'm the whole district. So there's 5 schools at Hamilton Wenham. It's a small district. Like the high school has, I think, way less than 1,000. I want to say maybe like 800, 700 students. And I'm part-time, so I'm only there 3 days a week. So it's a little busy. I usually will go to at least probably 3 schools in a day. Sometimes I go to all of them. Occasionally I'll just be in one, but that's like a gift.
So how do you connect with the student initially? Is it through the SPED department or is it parent requests? Is it, can it be content area teachers?
When I first started, it was kind of a free-for-all. We had a new special ed coordinator and a new for the district, and then a new one at the high school and middle school. So we've kind of ironed out how to go through it, but sometimes people will just cut to the line. But it's supposed to go that they'll contact their families will contact their special education liaison, so their special ed teacher. Then that teacher will fill out a form requesting assistive technology and what they think the student might need. They send that to the coordinator. So the elementary schools have one, and then the middle and high school have one. And then they'll contact me, and depending if it's like a full evaluation, then I'll write up a report and share it with the family during their 3-year or IEP meeting, or sometimes we'll have a separate meeting. And then sometimes it's more low key. We'll just have like a consultation, and I'll just meet with the student and the teacher, and we'll go over some tools and see if there's anything that they can incorporate. I prefer it to be that way because then it's a little bit more fluid and organic compared to sometimes I'll write a report and the student might require some areas of AT, like maybe their handwriting is poor and they could benefit from using a word processor. But to me, that's so built into most of the curriculums anyway that I don't think it necessarily requires an AT specialist, because all of the schools have Chromebooks and iPads, and then I think sometimes parents can latch onto it a little bit too much, and then if the student, like they might forego working on handwriting for, say, a 3rd grader because they only want their kids to be using assistive technology. But really, I mean, every case is different, but sometimes it's important to still continue to work on those foundational skills and then know that AT is an option always, that they can, begin with the handwriting and then transition over on each assignment or something like that.
I had such a good question and it just fell out of my head. Oh, UDL. Have you, because you mentioned, everybody has a Chromebook. How much of an impact does UDL have on your work? And do you find that if a teacher is making an allowance for one kid or, is using something for one kid that it might find itself in their practice? I mean, what's your take on that?
I love UDL. I think the more that we can incorporate it, the better. And kids usually fall into like one of three categories. They either want nothing to do with technology, it's embarrassing and it's different and they don't want to use it. That's category one. They'll either be gung-ho, all they want to use is technology. They don't care what they're using. They want I call it the Bill Belichick mic. They want, they'll be using that in class and they love it. And then there's the kids that will use technology, but only if they see that their peers are using them. And I think the best way is just to have it available, kind of like flexible seating, so that there's technology available in the classroom, and then letting all the kids choose, because there might be kids who just prefer to type their work or voice type their work, but they're not given the chance to do that. And they might not be on an IEP, they might not need any help, but that's just how they learn best. So giving them the choice, I think, encourages other people to use it and allows the child who really needs it to feel like it's normalized. And I wanted to say, I wrote this in my notes, a lot of what was considered assistive technology to be like really high tech and incredible back in the day is being used every day. Like if you use Siri, that used to be a really expensive technology to do, I always confuse them, voice to text technology. I remember when I was in school for OT, we went to an assistive tech specialist and she showed us a program. I think it was Dragon. It was like, I think $1,500 for this full setup. And now you can literally do it for free. All you need is your iPhone or iPad or whatever tool you're using. It's built basically into everything. So I definitely foresee that continuing. And I think that in itself brings UDL to life. Just knowing that it's available, and most kids are already texting using voice to text, so they know exactly how it works, which is good for me because then they already know how to use it, and they'll be using it for spell check, which is what I recommend for kids who have like really, really intense spelling needs. Sometimes I'll just have them check their work using spell check. So my thoughts on UDL are very positive.
Does anybody else want to jump in with a question?
I can answer the questions from here.
Oh, yeah, if you don't mind doing that.
Sure. Okay. So someone wanted to know what types of tools we use and how much they cost. And it depends. I have one student, for example, who she's quite expensive. She is in a wheelchair, and we've been working really hard to figure out how she can communicate. And it turns out we just ordered a switch that is by her cheek. So, and she has really, really, really low vision. She gets really distracted by auditory. So we're kind of practicing the switch using a pod book. So basically it's a communication book. It's not on an iPad or anything. It can be eventually, but right now it's a book, and we're just having her do yes, no using the switch so that she can get in that motion without being too distracted, in hopes that eventually she'll be able to transition to something more techy. So we'll have her play games using the switch because games are fun. They like games, and she just has to like tap the switch like that. And that cost for her full setup probably about $400. And it's like, it's one of those things where the switches are so expensive because they only have to make them per each student. If they were to create a video game where you were using a switch like that, then the switch would probably cost $5, $10. Like eye gaze used to be incredibly expensive. So eye gaze, and it still kind of is, but I'm talking like $10, $15, $20,000. And there are now video games that have a little bar that allows eye gaze to just go like right on the top of your computer. And now it's about $300 for something like that, which can then be used for those types of students.
Is
So it's
eye gaze
all,
the one where they have like a chart, and my friend's sister had ALS, and she would like look at a specific thing, and that's how she would spell things out?
that's
Okay.
exactly. So the eye gaze itself is, I think there's two different types. One is a camera, and it'll read your eye movements on the camera. And the other one is like a laser, and I think I should know more, but it reads it a little bit different. So I'm not very good, but there's two different types. And the grid itself is determined usually by the speech pathologist. So for your friend, she probably cognitively was like you and me. But for some students, they might only be able to access pictures or symbols. So they might have 2 symbols, and that's what they can choose from is 1 and 2. Some kids might have 60 symbols, and that's what they can choose from. Some kids might have 60 words, because if you're going to spell out each and every word, that can get kind of fatiguing. And it's like a lot of work. You have to be, most speech pathologists who do this end up being like, that's their full career, because there's just so many programs that you can do, and it's so dependent on the student. So I got a little sidetracked, but yes, your friend was using eye gaze, it sounds like.
So you were talking about like expense and how if something can be monetized outside of its community, then the price drops.
Exactly. So it's a little bit frustrating because a lot of these guys need certain tools that will just help, but they're just like crazy expensive. There's one, it's called like a step-by-step switch. It's literally a switch that records their voice, and it's about $150. And all it is a single switch in a voice recorder. But because they're not popular with the general public, it ends up being that much money. But most of the kids at school, I would say their tools can be free. I actually have a PowerPoint. It's not finished, but I can share it with you guys. It is on free tools for the Chromebook. So if possible, I try and encourage free tools because I have a very small budget. Oh, which was someone else's question. I'll get there in a sec. But our budget is tight, and I try and allow as many students to have access as possible. And then it encourages UDL, because teachers will be like, oh, that worked for Johnny. I wish Susie could have that, even though Susie's not an IEP. And then if it's free, I can say, well, go ahead. This is how you access it, and she can, and all of your students can use it. Someone did ask specifically about our budget, and this is another thing I'm kind of ironing out. It's actually my professional goal for the year, but the budget itself is about $4,000, and about $3,200 of that go to reading programs. So it's not actually assistive tech stuff per se, but it comes from that budget. And then a lot of the iPads that we use are iPad 2s, which means it has that cable that's like an inch thick, which means it's really, really old. And they need to be, I mean, they hardly work anymore. They work for like Google Docs, but they're just really obsolete, and they don't even allow voice to text. They're that old. So the budget that I can spend is usually about $800 a year. And I've been here 2.5 years, and almost all of it goes to purchasing iPads. Our tech leader believes that iPads can outlive Chromebooks. He's very team iOS, and I love iPads. I think that there's so much that you can do with them, so I'm very much on board with that. But I also love Chromebooks, so if you're in a district that uses Chromebooks, there's so much that you can do with Chromebooks too. feel like that was most of your questions. Somebody asked, can you tell us about what tools you use for each of the populations? So visually impaired, dyslexic. Yes. It definitely depends. I think the best way would be if I can share that PowerPoint with you and you can just kind of go through it. I can talk about AT for like 3 hours, so I don't want to like suck up too much of your time. But I would say if you have specific questions, feel free to ask me. But what most, like, I would say what 90% of the students I see need are usually tools to help them with reading and writing, tools to help them with academic organization, and then tools to help them with maybe like social regulation. So for reading and writing, there's a lot that you can use. Let me just open my PowerPoint quick. I guess as librarians, reading is probably the biggest one. And again, it depends on what type of device that you're using, but there are lots of programs that will speak the text for you. So Read and Write for Google Chrome, it'll actually highlight the words as you go and it'll read them for you. These are also built basically into any device that you're using naturally. Like if you're using an iPad, if you go into accessibility, there's an option to speak the screen. So you'll just slide 3 fingers down and it'll read the whole screen to you. Actually, maybe I should share. I also have a YouTube page. No one really watches it, but you guys can go on there and just see a couple of the videos I've created for staff. You'll probably get me more views than I've received from anyone else.
That's great. Any resources that you can post, like in the discussion, would be terrific.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that people really like that sort of, boots on the ground thing. I had wanted to ask you about, and I can't remember where I heard it, but somebody was telling me that, like, when you're putting together an IEP or when you're putting together a plan for AT, you don't ever mention a specific tool. You mention the thing that you need it to do. Is that the case?
That's very wise. I usually will, if it's for an assistive tech evaluation, I'll do exactly that. I'll say they need text-to-speech technology or they need speech to text or they need to have a visual calendar, something very general. So that way the tools can be modified. If I ever do put, for example, Google Read and Write, then I'll put a blurb up at the top that says like, these apps are fluid and the student needs this technology rather than this actual program. But oftentimes I'm very visual, so I will put like a little icon and I'll put like a suggested app. So I might say Read and Write for I'll put Read and Write and then I'll put VoiceStream Writer and then I'll put accessibility on the iPad. So I'll put like 3 different pictures and then I'll do a description of all of them. And I'll just mention that the goal is to have them use this piece of the assistive technology, but that there are multiple formats that you can get it from. Because at this point, I think back in the day, you probably could only do it like maybe Dragon was your only option. But now, I mean, there's like probably 10, 15 ways you can do the exact same thing, if not more. So I agree with you. It's not necessary to put a specific item because then you're locked into it. I've seen teachers who would put Learning Ally because we've been lucky enough to have access to it for a long time. But if you don't have, bless you.
Thank you.
If you don't get access to Learning Ally the next year, then you're obligated to purchase that for that student when Bookshare is going to do the exact same thing. So it's smart to be general, especially in the IEP itself.
Okay. All right.
Robin, this is Marty. I have a question. Barb, are you still speaking?
Oh, yay, a question.
Okay. So I'm very new to this, and that's why I submitted no questions, is because I really had no idea. So I have a question. If you're using the school budget for a lot of these technologies, does that mean that they have to stay in the school, or can the student bring them home if they could use it at home? Like, I'm thinking of like the girl who uses the Switch to communicate. Like, that might be something that her family would find useful, but if it's being paid for by the school district, does that mean that it has to stay in the school, or can it go home?
That's a really good question. So if it is a student's voice, then they need to bring that home with them. I don't leave my voice at school. The student has to bring their voice wherever they're going. So in a perfect world, they would be purchasing their voice through their own insurance, because what's going to happen when school's over, they're no longer going to have their voice, because when they're 21, we don't continue to provide that. They're checked out of the system. And now, what are they going to do? So in a perfect world, they would go through Medicare. We have about, I'd say, 8 students that I know of that use school-issued devices for their voices. And those students bring it to, if they go to a private school, because sometimes if the school can't provide the curriculum that they need, they'll have the student head out to a local different school that might be more specialized, kind of like coding school where I used to work. So in that case, I have the parents fill out a form that says that they'll be responsible for anything that's lost or broken, but it's a pretty, it's not enforced. I've been talking to my SPED coordinator, because we have a couple students that have been breaking their iPads. One is on his 4th one since August. So, and given our very, very tight budget, it is problematic. So she's talking to our lawyer, but if it's in their IP, we have to provide it. So it's a very murky area. There are students, though, who don't necessarily use it as their voice, but they, like I have one student, for example, who he just like won't do his homework, like a lot of kids. He just has excuses everywhere. And I was brought in to look at options to digitize his homework. And we found something that's going to work. It alerts him by GPS the second he gets home that he has to do his homework. And that's what he's using. So he gets to take that home. And basically anyone that needs to take it home may, but I have them fill out this form, even though the form doesn't actually lead to anything. But it gives me peace of mind to know that they understand that there is responsibility with taking it home.
Thank you.
Sure. Anyone else?
What's that program that alerts you by GPS? I want it for my son.
It's called,
What is it called?
it's called Google Keep.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's a free app, and it's awesome. So it syncs with all devices. So if you're on an iPad, iPhone, laptop, you just pull it up and it'll sync right on there. And you can take a picture. So if he's in math class and he's too lazy to write down his homework, he can just snap a picture and then it'll be his math homework. He can draw it in. If he feels the need to handwrite it in, he can do that. He can type it in, or he can voice type it. And this, oh my God, it's so cool. I wish I could show you on it, but it allows you to voice type and it'll translate But you know, sometimes it doesn't get your voice right and it like types all this nonsense that you didn't say. If that's the case, you can actually play back your message and then you can hear what you meant to say. So it like
Oh.
not only saves it and gives you like an estimated text, speech to text, but it also lets you play back whatever you originally said. So you can be like, that's what I meant. And then it lets you set a timer. So if you wanted to have your homework by 5 p.m., you can set it to do a timer, or you can set it by GPS. So if you go to the Y after school, then you can plug it into the YMCA. And then once you get to the Y, it'll go ding, 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 do your homework. And you can share it with your parents or teachers. We've had people do that. But Google Keep, you have to share every single one. So if somebody is taking a picture in math and then typing their English and then voice typing their civics, they're going to have to keep sharing and sharing that. So if it's, I have another student whose parents are divorced and mom saying she doesn't know what the homework is, dad saying he didn't get the homework, student saying he doesn't know the homework. So we'll share everybody on the same document. That way, no matter where he goes, and this is just a Google Doc. I can share that with you guys too. It's just a Google template. I put their subjects in one corner and then on the top just Monday through Friday. And then it's just a fluid document that will keep track of their homework and the student updates it every day.
Wow.
Smart.
That's cool.
Yeah,
Well, thank you.
sure.
Is there anybody else that has any questions? I planned on half an hour to 45 minutes, so I feel as if we've accomplished this, but I don't want to cut you off before everybody's had the chance to. Is there anything else you feel like we should know?
I guess I just encourage you guys, if you do have any questions that, like I'm fine giving a non-politically correct answer. So if you've ever wanted to know something and felt like I can't ask this person because, I don't know, if you want to ask me something, feel free, even if it's not in this format, you can ask me elsewhere and I'll share like my real answer with you. I'll give you my PC answer and then I'll share my real answer with you. If that's all.
Mhm.
Fair enough. And if you come up with anything, if anybody else comes up with any questions, it's okay to put them in the discussion.
Definitely.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you so much. This was really interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope that was
Well,
Have a good night. Nice to see you.
I'll put the link for the recording as soon as I figure out how to do it. I'll put that. I'll send that out. If
all
I
right, thank you. All right, bye.
Thank you. Bye. Good
Bye.
night.
Bye, thank you.
Good night.